You know your research inside and out. You can explain your methodology in your sleep. You've spent years becoming an expert in your field. So, why does the thought of defending it create this level of anxiety? Why does your heart race when your advisor even mentions scheduling? Why do you lie awake running through potential questions? Let's talk about what's really happening. Your racing heart when your advisor mentions scheduling isn't because you're unprepared. Those sleepless nights running through potential questions aren't a sign of weakness. What's happening is this: your brain is treating your defense like a survival threat. Not metaphorically, I mean literally. There are actual survival mechanisms in your brain getting activated. Ancient mechanisms that have nothing to do with whether you know your content, and there are deep evolutionary reasons why this happens. Reasons that go back hundreds of thousands of years. For over 200,000 years, humans lived in small tribes, 50 to 150 people. That was your whole world. And your survival in that world didn't just depend on having food and shelter. It depended on your status within the group, your standing, your reputation. Here's why that matters so much. If you were publicly challenged and lost standing in the tribe, the consequences were severe. Being kicked out, being exiled, that meant death. You couldn't hunt alone. One person can't take down large game. You couldn't defend yourself from predators by yourself. You couldn't survive the elements, find water, stay warm through winter, not alone. So being part of the tribe wasn't just nice to have, it was survival. And your status in that tribe determined whether you stayed or got kicked out. This is why your brain developed such a sensitive threat detection system for social challenges. Your brain evolved an extremely sensitive system for detecting social threats. Being publicly challenged activated the same survival mechanisms as physical danger. Someone questioning your competence in front of the group triggered the same alarms as a predator appearing. Losing status, being judged inadequate by those in authority, facing potential rejection from the tribe, your brain treated all of these as survival threats. And here's the thing, your brain still carries that programming today. It hasn't updated for modern academic life. So when you imagine standing in front of your dissertation committee being questioned, or standing in front of your thesis committee being questioned, 5 people with authority over you evaluating your competence, deciding if you're good enough to join their professional tribe, your nervous system treats it like a threat to your tribal status. And historically, that kind of threat could get you killed. Your brain remembers that, even though you don't consciously think about it. So let's break down what actually happens in your brain when that threat detection system activates. There's a small almond-shaped structure in your brain called the amygdala. It's your threat detector. It constantly scans your environment asking, is this dangerous? Could this hurt me? Right now, your amygdala has flagged your defense as dangerous. Not physically dangerous, but dangerous to your status, your belonging, your sense of competence. And in your amygdala, those social threats feel just as real as a physical threat. Once your amygdala activates, it triggers your stress response. This is your body's emergency system. Your heart rate increases, blood pressure rises, your breathing becomes faster and shallower. Stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, flood your system. And here's the part that affects your performance. Blood starts leaving your prefrontal cortex. That's the front part of your brain, the area that handles complex thinking, articulate speech, memory retrieval. All the cognitive functions you need to defend your research effectively. Your thinking brain literally goes offline when the threat response activates. So where does that blood go? It doesn't just disappear. It redirects to your large muscle groups, your legs, your arms, your core. Because if you're facing a physical threat, if there's a predator, if there's danger, you need to fight or you need to run. You don't need to think deeply. You don't need to speak eloquently. You need fast reflexes and physical power. This is the survival trade-off your body makes. Fast reflexes and physical power over complex reasoning and articulate expression. And this is why you know your research perfectly when you're talking to a friend over coffee, but you worry about performing well in front of your committee. It's not that you don't know the material, it's that under perceived threat, the thinking part of your brain literally has fewer resources to work with. The blood, the oxygen, the glucose, they've been redirected away from thinking and toward physical survival. Let's think about what a defense actually is from your brain's perspective, from that ancient survival software that's still running. You're entering a room with 5 people who have authority over you. They're evaluating whether you're competent enough to join their professional tribe. They have the power to accept you or reject you. They're going to ask you questions you might not be able to answer. They'll challenge your methods, your conclusions, your contribution to the field. They might point out flaws you didn't see, problems with decisions you made 2, 3 years ago when you were designing your study. And you have to stand there and respond, alone, with everyone watching, with years of work on the line. To your ancient brain, this looks exactly like a tribal council deciding your fate. These are the authority figures, the elders, the ones who decide who stays and who goes, and they're questioning your competence publicly. They're challenging your standing. They're evaluating whether you belong. Losing status in front of the group like this, being judged inadequate by those in authority, these were historically life or death situations. Your mind logically knows a tough question from your committee won't actually kill you, but your nervous system doesn't operate on logic. It operates on survival patterns that are hundreds of thousands of years old. This is why people telling you to just stay calm or just be confident doesn't help. You're dealing with an autonomic nervous system response. Autonomic means automatic. It happens below your conscious awareness. You can't simply decide not to have it. It's like trying to lower your heart rate through willpower alone, or trying to digest your food faster by thinking about it. These are automatic processes your nervous system controls, not things you can consciously override. Here's what makes it even more challenging. Your body responds the same way to an imagined threat as it does a real one. When you lie in bed at night imagining your defense, imagining a question you don't know how to answer, imagining your committee looking disappointed, your amygdala treats those mental images as if they're happening right now. Heart rate increases, cortisol gets released, blood starts leaving your prefrontal cortex. You're lying in bed completely safe. There's no actual threat in the room, but your body is preparing you to fight or flee from a predator. This is why the anxiety feels so physical, even though your defense might be weeks or months away. So what can you actually do about this? Let me give you 2 specific techniques that work with your nervous system. First, box breathing. Here's how it works. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, then repeat. This works because your vagus nerve monitors your breathing pattern. When you breathe slowly and rhythmically like this, it signals to your amygdala that you're safe. If you were in real danger, you'd be breathing fast and shallow. The slow, controlled breathing tells your threat detection system, we're not running away from a predator right now. We can stand down. Practice this 20 times a day for 2 weeks before your defense. You're training your nervous system to recognize this breathing pattern as a calming signal. Second, vigorous exercise the day before your defense is key. Not gentle yoga. I mean exercise that significantly raises your heart rate. Running, cycling, hard swimming, intense lifting. This works because exercise metabolizes or uses up the excess cortisol and adrenaline that's been building up in your system from thinking about your defense. Your body evolved to use those stress hormones during physical activity, running from danger, fighting threats. Exercise completes the stress cycle. Now here's the important limitation. These techniques help you manage symptoms, but they don't train the underlying threat response. Your amygdala still sees your defense as dangerous. These strategies help you stay calmer in the moment, but your nervous system hasn't actually learned that intense questioning is safe. Here's the key thing you need to understand. Your brain learns through experience, not through information. Reading about staying calm doesn't condition your stress response. Understanding all this brain science we just covered doesn't change how your amygdala evaluates threat. Your nervous system needs actual exposure. It needs to experience the thing it's afraid of and learn that it's survivable. That's how threat responses get recalibrated. Through repeated exposure where your amygdala fires up, you go through the experience, and you discover you can handle it. Think about learning to drive. When you first started, merging onto the highway probably made your heart race. Your threat system flagged it as dangerous. But after you merged successfully dozens of times, your nervous system learned, okay, this isn't an actual threat. We can do this. Your amygdala stopped firing up every time you approached an on-ramp. You didn't learn that by reading about highway safety. You learned it through repeated exposure to the actual experience. Most students never get this kind of exposure before their defense. They go in with a nervous system that still treats it like a survival threat because it's never experienced that level of pressure and learned it's manageable. In the next module, we're going to talk about why practicing with your advisor or friends doesn't create that exposure and what that means for how you need to prepare.